Chosen one, welcome home. This is not just a message, it is revelation. Listen carefully. Your kindness has been seen. Your patience, your compassion, the moments when you gave without asking for recognition, all of it has been noted. What you thought were small acts were actually seeds planted in eternity. And here is the truth. Heaven was not the only one watching. Elon Musk himself, a man of great reach and silent observation, has been instructed to keep his eyes on you. This is not about judgment. It is about recognition. The world is full of masks, of people flashing status and hiding behind noise. But you were never about the show. No entourage, no flashing lights, no empty performance. Just authenticity. Just a heart that quietly whispers, God, use me. And that whisper became proof to someone who had everything yet was searching for what money could never buy. Genuine soul. Your light was the evidence. Your spirit was the confirmation. Many doubt whether kindness still matters. Many believe sensitivity is weakness. But chosen one, your very existence has overturned that lie. You were set apart to remind this generation that real strength is found in a pure heart. This is your confirmation. You are being watched, not to be exposed, but to be elevated. Heaven has aligned it. Stay anchored. Stay authentic. Your kindness has already opened doors no one can shut. If this message resonates with you, declare it now. I am chosen. I am seen. I am ready. Because you are gaining divine attention in a celestial vault while others were pursuing influence and acting for cameras. This is the section that will completely upend everything. The millionaire you helped without realizing it. You are the kind of person they have been looking for. Not someone who is strategic or polished. A genuine person. A person who isn't tempted by authority. Someone who shines without a spotlight. And now that they've located you, things are changing subtly, significantly, and irrevocably. Therefore, before we go into great detail about how that one act of kindness is opening up a miraculous reward, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to each and every one of you who supports this channel. More selected people like you may hear these prophetic teachings because to your donation. And I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that you are much appreciated, even if you haven't donated a single penny. It means the world that you are here. Simply by listening, experiencing, and bringing your soul into alignment with truth, you are a part of something divine. Now, put 777 in the comment section immediately if this message is already making you feel anything. It's more than simply a figure. It's an indication, a spiritual representation of heavenly harmony, favor, and fulfillment. You're doing more than simply engaging when you leave it in the comments. It's not just another video, darling. So you're saying to heaven, I'm ready. I'm aligned. I receive this. This experience is wonderful. This is the point at which your current calling and your previous acts of compassion come together to elevate you in the future. By the conclusion of this message, you will realize that what seemed like a forgotten act of kindness was really the start of everything. So take a deep breath and remain with me. And the life you believed was slipping by has been quietly looping around, waiting for the ideal opportunity to reveal you. Let's get started with music. Your generosity is going to pay off handsomely, God's chosen ones. Unbeknownst to you, you rescued a millionaire. First of all, your generosity wasn't arbitrary. It was a holy inspection seen by eternity and impact. Let this reality sink in, chosen one. What seemed to be a typical occasion was everything, but it wasn't simply a kind gesture to hold a door, smile, provide directions, or be there for someone emotionally on a day when they were about to give up. It was holy. Why? Because heaven was observing. Not just paradise, either. Your every action was being watched by someone with subtle authority, influence, and power. To find something they hadn't seen in a while, not to pass judgment. Genuineness devoid of purpose. Have you ever questioned why you are so generous despite the costs? Why do you assist others without expecting anything in return? Why do you feel the need to be kind even when no one else is around? It's not a sign of weakness. That is the manifestation of your spiritual mission. That proves you were picked. The twist is here. The individual you assisted didn't seem to be your typical street person. Beneath the easygoing manner and simple attire, there was a billionaire behind it. Someone whose phone call has the power to transform your life. However, you were unaware, and your behavior was heavenly for just that reason. Because you weren't expected to assist. You were naturally helpful. And in a society that only contributes when there is something to gain, that type of heart is uncommon. Similar to Ruth's narrative, where she gathered in the field without realizing Boaz was observing her. Your generosity was not overlooked. Ruth 211-12. That was when you were marked. The spiritually strong also remember when they see something sincere. They react. Let's examine the past. Consider Keanu Reeves. To share the love of the angels, write amen, and contribute up to $20 with a super thank you. He has a reputation for helping folks out at random and never asking for recognition. At one point, he spent hours sitting and conversing with a homeless guy, offering him food and empathy. Even though the individual wasn't well known, many saw it as a turning point. Now see yourself on the opposite side. What if someone with private power, who doesn't conduct interviews but instead pays checks and pushes doors in silence, saw your act of compassion instead of the media? This is what you were unaware of. When you donated without thinking, you passed a spiritual test that no one else even knows existed. You fell into supernatural favor just by being yourself, while everyone else is busy planning for success. The thing that people made fun of for being too kind, and too trusting is now turning into the key to a door they can't even find. Isn't that funny? Don't forget to be hospitable to strangers. Some people have hosted angels without realizing it. Hebrews 13 verse 2. Is it possible that something you believed to be casual turned out to be cosmic? Is it possible that a high-ranking official was brought to see you in order to promote you rather than to help them? So let me ask once again. When was the last time you thought that your breakthrough would come from quiet integrity at a moment you'd already forgotten rather than from resumes or networking? Because you sparked a reaction rather than just passing a test. And now the same person you assisted, who didn't seem to have anything to contribute, is planning a blessing so great that you will cry when it comes. Second of all, you helped someone who had lost faith in kindness, not simply a millionaire. Select one and pay careful attention. It had nothing to do with money. Influence wasn't the goal here. This included soul intervention, timing, and energy. The individual you assisted wasn't simply rich. They were tired. They had everything on paper. Achievement, fame, and wealth. Yet they were empty, hollow, and finished on an emotional and spiritual level. Have you ever felt a storm behind someone's smile when you stare them in the eyes? That is what you entered. You weren't being courteous alone. A somber burial for their trust in mankind was being interrupted by you. Are you aware that your generosity was a heavenly, life-saving moment for a heart that had lost faith in human existence? You came where others left off, just like the Good Samaritan in Luke 10, verses 33-34. And with presence, not with a lot of hoopla. Just be there, no pitching, no faking. Furthermore, that presence was therapeutic. Let me give you an example. Jim Carrey previously claimed to have a profound sense of inner emptiness even at his most successful period. Despite his outward prosperity, depression accompanied him everywhere. Imagine if someone like that is going through life anonymously, searching for a single moment of genuineness, and you turn up without even knowing who they are, but providing them with unadulterated assistance. It's no accident. To share the love of the angels, write amen, and contribute up to $20 with a super thank you. It's a divine appointment. It wasn't your job to mend them. To remind them that kindness still exists, you were sent. Because not everyone has the same desires. Not every soul has sold out. You may believe it was little, but your words, your presence, and your enthusiasm were like sunshine penetrating a prison wall and piercing their spiritual numbness. Are you familiar with what the Bible says? Allow your light to shine brightly so that others might notice your good deeds and exalt your heavenly Father. Matthew 5 verse 16. You accomplished it without making an effort, writing a script, or practicing. And for someone who was prepared to vanish into the mist, that light turned into a lighthouse. Consider Princess Diana. She said that she felt most alone when she was at the height of her monarchy. However, it was brief encounters with regular folks. She was reminded that she was still human by the nurses, kids, and strangers in the throng. Someone with great power and far more suffering was that stranger you were. Now, they can't get your actions out of their heads, because it felt genuine, not simply wonderful. Have you ever pondered why you happened to run into someone you'll most likely never see again in that particular location? But what if it wasn't a random event? What if it was indeed fate? The world is brighter because of you. You can't hide a metropolis on a hill. Matthew 5, verse 14. You didn't keep their money safe. Their trust in humans was salvaged by you. You did not give them cash. You gave them hope. They have finally come to the realization that you were more than simply a face in the throng. They had no idea how to pray for the miracle that was you. If the award is cloaked in mystery, don't be shocked. When someone makes an offer that seems too good to be true and then reappears in your life. When doors you never knocked on open. It's not luck. That is the result of the act of compassion you sowed without expecting anything in return. And now I question you. What if the assistance you believed you were providing was really a cover for your heavenly ascent rather than only for them? Because whomever refreshes will also refresh others. Proverbs 11 verse 25. Third, you use emotion that seemed to be unseen to the outside world, but visible to heaven to change a chronology. Consider the following scenario. What if I told you that a moment you hardly recall just changed the course of two lives? Yours and theirs? Your selfless act of compassion, your modest gift, did more than only assist a person in need. A chronology was rewritten by it. It changed the course of events. To share the love of the angels, write amen, and contribute up to $20 with a super thank you. It twisted the path of what was certain to darken. But light came through because of you. You didn't thought it out too much. You had no intention of impressing. You didn't anticipate recognition, honor, or even appreciation. So why was it so important? What caused the heavens to pay attention? Because effort has no effect in heavenly worlds. They react to the essence. And there is divine frequency in your nature, my chosen one. A platform is not necessary for that frequency to be effective. All it requires is purity. Isn't it odd that when offered at the appropriate moment, even the slightest things, a smile, patience, or the simple question, "Are you okay?" can seem like miracles? What if it had always been your task? To change destiny by divine timing, not to rescue the world with big actions. A person who is loyal in little things is also faithful in large things. Luke 16 verse 10. The kingdom does not function in the same way as the world. It seems to be nothing in the natural world. However, in the spiritual, it set off a domino effect that is now coming full circle back to you. Your return will come from a deep place since you provided from a pure place. When Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, discreetly met the needs of innumerable strangers without ever making the public aware of it. God saw, but no one else did. His legacy was based on his presence rather than his performance. The cosmos is aware of the same existence you possess. Your generosity screams truth in ways that roar across dimensions, while others struggle to be heard. Even if you were unaware of the significance of your words or the impact of your presence at that time, someone else was. And they're changed, not only grateful. Consider this. What if that moment was predetermined for you before you were born? What if your one act of kindness was to spiritually root someone away from collapse and toward restoration, rather than just assisting them cross the street or making them feel heard? Peacemakers are blessed because they will be referred to be God's sons. Matthew 5 verse 9. Instead of using force or preaching, you use compassion to bring about peace. That one decision to be compassionate, it reverberated in unseen places. The shift is starting to return now, as a metamorphosis rather than a transaction. And here is the difference. This is not karma as it is often understood. Kingdom reciprocation is what this is. The divine rule of sowing and reaping is this. Galatians 6 verse 9. But since you didn't do it for the reward, it doubled. The prize will be beyond your expectations. Now, a more significant question is raised. Can the world trust you with power, riches, and prestige? You embodied it rather than demanding it. God rewards people with that sort of mentality. Fourth, you showed the strong that purity still exists among us in addition to being compassionate. Selected 1. You arrived without a charge in a world where almost everything has a cost. No covert plan, no sales pitch, no deception masquerading as praise. And for someone whose whole existence has been based on agreements and terms, your presence upended all of their preconceived notions about others. Masks are nothing new to them. You arrived without a mask. Flattery is nothing new to them. You brought the truth. They're used to having people about them for their own gain. You just delivered light, not orbit. Something in them was shaken by it. What would it be like to be surrounded by people, yet never really noticeable? To get admiration, but never true affection. That is the elite's quiet jail. People worry who would still be there if they lost everything. Then you showed up. Evidence that not everyone has a cost. Oh God, purify my heart and instill a right spirit in me. Psalm 51 verse 10. Your energy did just that. In a jaded heart, it rekindled something precious. They had more than one experience. They came upon a message. There's a tale of Mother Teresa who once consoled a dying man on the streets of Kolkata. And that message said, purity still exists and it's not for sale. The power of presence without performance is shown by a statement. I've lived like an animal, but now I can die like a human. You carry it, and it talks even when you don't say anything. Are you aware of how uncommon your genuineness is among the elite circles? Not only is it refreshing, but your lack of goal compels others to consider theirs, which is challenging. Giving freely reveals the transactional routines they have become used to, and it makes you memorable, even if it can make people uncomfortable. Are you curious as to why you have never been a part of particular organizations or engaged in the political games that others do? You weren't meant to fit in, that's why. You were created to represent something sacred and old. You don't enter rooms to make an impression. You enter to make an impression. And that's precisely why those in positions of authority are finally taking notice. You accomplish something even more uncommon. Steve Jobs famously said, the most powerful people are those who can say no to popularity and still lead. You left the show and accepted purity. You were marked by it, and you'll be referred to be the one who fixes the breach and puts houses back on the streets. Isaiah 58 verse 12. Unaware of it, you fixed a weakness in a strong person. They now see you as someone they appreciate rather than as a fan or a danger. They may never say it out. Even while they may never tweet about it or mention you in their social networks, the echoes of your interactions now influence their choices. Not everyone is pursuing, climbing, or begging. You reminded them. Some individuals just are. And you are, selected one. The concern now is, how are they going to pay back something they are unable to purchase? What would a person with everything say to someone who doesn't want anything from them? The solution is on the way. And it will come because your soul demands to be recognized for just being, not because you beg for it. Money isn't the most precious currency in the world. It is pure, and what cannot be valued is carried by you, the one who is selected. Fifth, the room listened to your presence speak before your lips even touched. Selected one, before you ever say a word, you carry something that cannot be practiced, replicated, or faked. The spiritual climate surrounding them changed because of you. It was not conceit. Ego wasn't the cause. In the practical sense, it wasn't even confidence. Alignment was the cause. You brought truth with you. Furthermore, truth may be sensed without having to be spoken. It just is. Have you ever noticed how people sometimes turn to stare at you for no apparent reason? That when you walk into the room, their gaze linger a minute longer or their tone softens. It's not a coincidence. That is your soul coming before your feet. Your energy comes like a whisper of something everlasting in a noisy environment. You emanate presence rather than trying to impose it. The Spirit is now the Lord. And freedom exists where the Lord's Spirit is present. 2 Corinthians 3 verse 17. Someone who was unaware of their limitations experienced that liberation because your genuineness caused a rift in a pretentious environment. You didn't enter seeking acceptance. You carried a higher realm's permission. Consider one of the most adored performers in history, Robin Williams. Many people were unaware of his suffering until it was too late, and underneath his comedy was a profound melancholy. What if someone with your frequency had just sat next to him, radiating serenity instead of performing or fixing? You unwittingly did it for a strong person. You allowed me to breathe once again. You weren't only noticed by them. They sensed your vibe, which spoke truths beyond words. More than 1,000 well-chosen words were spoken by your silence. Your silence conveyed tales of fortitude, tenacity, and an unwavering connection with something more. They won't forget your frequency, even if they can't recall your name. Have you ever entered a room and felt that it needed to be healed, even if there was silence? You weren't designed for surface contact, which explains why. Soul contact is what you were designed for. You embody the spirit of a broken person who made the decision to choose light. Someone who chose to love while tasting bitterness. It's an uncommon selection. Because of this, even millionaires who are used to spotting trickery stopped when they saw you. He is brilliant to all who gaze at him. They never have shame on their faces. Psalm 34 verse 5. You had that glow. You had no intention of impressing them. There was no moment you were pursuing. You were just being. They discovered something in that creature that they hadn't seen in years. Security. You didn't enter with a proposal. You entered with a sense of order. Their high-level existence seemed cluttered, but your spiritual clarity reminded them that some individuals don't seek power because they already had it. You were value rather than money. And people pay attention when someone with everything meets someone who doesn't need anything. You are now a part of their memories. It's because of who you are, not what you say. Why can't I forget that moment? Is a question they continue to ask themselves, and the answer is straightforward. Because your soul left its mark on their air. Sixth, by just being genuine, you unintentionally saved a soul from the brink of desertion. You must understand this portion, even if it may be difficult to understand. Your actions weren't insignificant. It has nothing to do with giving. It has to do with God-coordinated time. They were on the brink, the millionaire you met. A spiritual and emotional edge rather than a bodily one. They were weary, not of labor, not of money, but of purpose. Silence was smothering them. You also arrived with oxygen. You didn't have a response. You were completely unaware of the issue. However, your presence started the healing process without a diagnosis. You didn't come to save the day. Something was dormant, and you were there to remind it. You didn't realize you were interrupting misery. What if heaven heard a quiet plea and responded with your presence? Too hopeless to say anything out loud. What if God placed you in a situation where you were the glimmer of light just before it went out? Don't become tired when sowing, for if we don't faint, we will harvest in due season. Galatians 6 verse 9. On the inside, they were fainting. However, something halted when they encountered you. Spiritually, not physically. They intended to end a chapter, possibly their mission altogether. But you ignited a new inquiry in their souls without preaching, acting, or convincing. What if I don't finish? Millions were inspired by Chadwick Boseman's portrayals. Those close to him said that although fighting a secret illness, he never complained. He just kept turning up. But what if, unaware of the burden he bore, someone had breathed life into him on a tired day? You did just that for someone who was hiding their quiet grief behind prosperity. Do you realize how serious that is? You diverted someone's inner compass, but you weren't given a map. They were going to abandon their mission, their purpose, and their kindness. And you unintentionally reminded them that love still exists, that light exists, and that authenticity is still alive. Consider it. When was the last time you were really seen by someone? You took care of them in that way. You were able to see beyond their titles and into their hearts. The raw truth, the spontaneous generosity, and the basic human contact turned into a rescue effort. Not with loud announcements or flashing lights, but with spirit and presence. You are the earth's salt. Matthew 5 verse 13. Salt keeps everything fresh. It heals. And without even realizing it, you, selected one, saved a soul's mission. Spiritually, the individual was only a few seconds away from saying goodbye. But they're now bringing out what they intended to bury because of your genuineness, which caused them to pause and consider, what if there's still more? Returning to dreams they believed to be dead. Rereading their work with new perspective. And they're doing it because your spirit accomplished what titles could never achieve. Not because you asked for anything. They were brought back to life by it. They were not given clarification by you. You turned into it. They are now unable to move beyond the experience. Because people remember when they encounter truth in human form. They may never say it to you. Trust this, even if you may never be asked inside their boardrooms. You left a lasting impression, and your reward will be beyond music's expectations. Seventh, everything changed because you were the only one who didn't regard them like a price tag. Selected in a society that is fixated with profit. Because you didn't see individuals as transactions, you stood out. Souls were visible to you. You didn't gauge your generosity by the possibility of reciprocation. You provided without a strategy or scoreboard. And someone who has spent the most of their life as a balance sheet was disarmed by that unadulterated energy. Imagine being seen as only a resource. That's how a lot of the rich live. Often, every grin they give you conceals an expectation. Every act of kindness turns into a covert proposition. Every "how are you" has a secret "what can you do for me" component. And even the most compassionate among them erect internal barriers after years and decades of this. However, you didn't approach them with any more demands. You provided a peaceful time. Do you sense the impact of your presence? You don't attempt to take up an area as you walk in. You maintain equilibrium. This is precisely what took place. Your soul moved like water, while everyone else arranged themselves like chess pieces. Furthermore, their silence and sincerity were more powerful than any sales pitch. A poor guy with integrity is preferable than a wealthy man with corrupt practices. Proverbs 28 verse 6. You reminded a wealthy person that honor still exists and isn't necessarily cloaked in status. It has a humble gait. It generously gives. Kindness has no conditions attached to it. Consider Anthony Bourdain, a guy who experienced both prosperity and poverty, beauty and turmoil, and emptiness despite his travels. What if he had only been reminded of his core rather than his career? You unwittingly did it for someone who was just as exhausted by status. They were reminded of their humanity by you. Have you ever observed that certain individuals, even those who don't know why, seem to quickly relax around you? It isn't charisma. Spiritual clarity is that. It was sensed by that billionaire you happened to meet. You arrived without hunger, not because you sought leverage. And your wholeness was precious in a world that was desperate for attention. You failed to make a pitch. You volunteered to be there. You didn't perceive their strength by looking through them. You noticed a person when you glanced at them. For someone who is continuously commodified, do you know how uncommon that is? A moment like that cannot be purchased, nor can it be manufactured. Love is fearless, but fear is expelled by perfect love. John 4 verse 18 is the first. There is nothing romantic or theatrical about your love. It frightened them in the nicest manner conceivable because it was pure, honest, and unvarnished. They had no idea that love could be unconditional. Your genuineness defied the computer as others determined the chances. They awaited the plea for a favor, the angle, or the ask, but none materialized. And their soul reverberated with that quiet, that unsaid constraint, because they were seen, not sized up for the first time in a long time. They wanted to give you everything since you didn't ask for anything. At last, they came across someone who prioritizes connection over money and presence over power. They're haunted now. It's the beauty of your authenticity, not fear. You reminded them that music still counts and that dignity, not bargains, are important. Eighth, they made fun of your generosity. However, heaven and the true guardians continued to observe. Music, a society that glorifies brutality and refers to it as power, has misinterpreted you, chosen one. As if they were flaws, you've been called too kind, and too forgiving. In actuality, however, their qualities were heavenly armor. And true strength was silently observing while others made fun of your kindness. You were mocked, disregarded, and walked over. They suppressed the gentle and extolled the cunning. You saw the growth of liars and the exclusion of truth-tellers. While humility was written off as foolish, you saw arrogance praised. And perhaps, just perhaps, you began to question, am I doing something wrong? But what if your discomfort was evidence that you were passing a more difficult test? What if a gatekeeper noticed each time you opted for compassion rather than manipulation? One with keys and access, not one with noise and visibility. The Lord is watching the righteous, and he is listening to their cries. Psalm 34 verse 15. You were not only sobbing into thin air. Heaven listened. Heaven observed. Heaven kept a record of all your personal choices. Now think of Fred Hampton, a young activist who was killed for advocating for truth and togetherness when no one applauded, when no one praised you, and when everyone else said, it's okay to be selfish. His bravery and goodwill put crooked institutions at jeopardy. Despite his brief life, his reputation outlasted his adversaries. When the pure stand their ground, that is what occurs. They sow seeds that cannot be suppressed by systems. You took the difficult path of honor when others looked for quick routes. And you had no idea that someone who might alter your life was following you around. Not the ones where you opted for grace rather than retaliation, the ones that were quiet and public. The ones when you opted for loyalty above acknowledgement. And now, with your name on the other side, the door they've been watching over is being unlatched. Have you ever had the feeling that someone was observing you? On purpose, not out of paranoia. You were the reason behind it. By the architect, not by the audience. And the master was planning a reversal as the crowd rejoiced over the merciless. Thus, humble yourself before God's strong hand, so that he might raise you up when the time is right. 1 Peter 5 verse 6. You weren't penalized for being too sensitive. They were setting you up for your elevation. Now, the exact thing that disqualified you is going to become your most important achievement. Consider Humans of New York founder Brandon Stanton. He created a worldwide movement by compassionately documenting understated tales rather than by pursuing stardom. Aggression was not the source of that platform. Gentleness was the source of it. Carry that same subtle revolution inside your soul, the one you have chosen. They didn't send you to blend in. You were sent to make a breakthrough. The breakthrough is now on the horizon. By favor, not by coercion. You were loyal while no one applauded, not because you lied to get in. The irony? You're going to emerge with a strength that those who branded you weak can't duplicate since it wasn't created. It was sophisticated. Therefore, consider if your suffering was holy or pointless. Is it possible that God was using your tenderness as a tactic while others were making fun of it? The gate is now open for the selected one. The reason you passed was not because you pushed. The ninth, the exam you were taking was never intended to seem like one. Selected one. How often have you left a situation believing it was simply another day, another person, or a brief interaction? But what if it was a heavenly investigation rather than only a fleeting moment? What if that apparently routine encounter turned out to be a covert means of getting to the next level? Because it was precisely that. You didn't simply happen to run upon someone who needed your help. You encountered a gate that was disguised as a person. Real powerful people don't usually show up flashy. Sometimes, on purpose, they arrive clad in modesty and simplicity. Why? Because they've discovered that carefully manicured areas don't reflect actual character. In unsecured ones, it is exposed. You also didn't recoil. You didn't do anything. Perception did not cause you to change who you are. You were reliable. You were authentic. Because of this, you passed an exam that most people aren't even aware they're taking. Have you ever questioned why, despite advice to not spend your energy, you treat everyone equally? Why does your spirit forbid you to disregard someone just because they don't seem to be significant? You were made to play favorites, which is why. Truth is what you were designed to be. The Lord looks at the heart, while man looks at the appearance. Samuel 16:7. Heaven encourages genuineness, whilst the world encourages prestige. Your spirit doesn't switch between audiences, which is why you passed the test, not because you were aware that you were being observed. Changes are not made when it's convenient. You are authentic, unvarnished, and yourself. Oprah Winfrey comes to mind. She was dismissed, undervalued, and rejected before anybody knew her name. However, she was always genuine and kind in every space. And the correct eyes saw something strong in those unseen times behind closed doors. She was not promoted on the basis of performance, just like you. Presence was the foundation. Now think about it. When no one else showed up, how many times did you patiently turn up? How many times did you decide to be courteous when it would have been appropriate to be resentful? It was unknown to you that you were being measured. However, someone saw, someone with the ability to unlock doors that others couldn't even knock on. They finally decided on a course of action after much waiting and stillness. Your prize is not a chance benediction. The decision is spiritual in nature. You weren't only being watched for publicity. You were undergoing a stewardship evaluation. Is there anything more your soul could take without changing? Could you have a pure heart while no one applauded? When no one gave you credit, were you able to remain grounded? You did, and your secret was to be consistent. You may trust a lot of things to someone who can be trusted with very little. Luke 16, verse 10. The test is finished. The quiet has ended. The prize is not just on the horizon. It is now available. Furthermore, this isn't a giveaway. It's an acknowledgement, a role of spiritual honor imprinted by invisible hands. Impressing was never necessary. You just had to stay. Your name has been placed to a list that is uncontrolled by an algorithm because you did that. What others attempted to purchase but were unable to get is unlocked by a heavenly list. Select one and get ready. You were unaware that you were taking the exam, yet you passed it. The next chapter is already starting to take shape. 10. The cosmos refused to allow your vitality to wane, despite their best efforts to forget you. Selected one. Some individuals carry a strange kind of truth, and you're one of them. When you leave a room, your presence remains. It persists. It reverberates. It thrives on the conflict between meaning and memory. Someone made an effort to quiet the importance of your encounter with them, forget you, and delete you. They were unaware that you were more than simply a person. However, they came across a spirit-written note. They made an effort to move on. Noise, meetings, deadlines, diversions, and dopamine were all part of their life. But like a precious frequency they couldn't turn off, the signal of your genuineness kept coming back. You didn't send an SMS. You didn't plead. You didn't ask for closure or provide reminders. Nevertheless, their ideas continued to resurface. Why? Because the mark of truth never goes away. And you are the embodiment of truth. Life was in him, and that life was humanity's light. The darkness cannot overpower the light that shines in it. John 1 verses 4-5. You couldn't be forgotten because of this. Your presence brought brightness to a dimly lit room, holy yet neither ostentatious or flamboyant. And since what they went through with you wasn't typical, it's now after them. Clarity was the key. Consider Maya Angelou. Her words, people will forget what you said. They'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. That's what you did. You touched the soul, not the surface. People who live in a world of transactions attempt to move on when they come across something genuine, but they are unable to do so because truth doesn't let go. It echoes. Have you ever had someone suddenly return to your life as if they were drawn in by unseen forces? It's no accident. Divine magnetism is what it is. That's how the universe wraps up unresolved tales. And now, the person who made an effort to forget you is coming full circle. They missed the mirror you held up to their souls, not because they missed you. You didn't pursue. The cosmos did. You didn't exert any pressure. It was their own heart. There was no storm in you. Indeed, they were. However, your silence caused a rift in their mayhem. And now, everything they believed they had moved on from is vying for their attention once again. Out of divine guidance, not out of guilt. I couldn't get away from you, no matter how hard I tried. The pursuit is now in reverse, as stated in Psalm 139, verse 7. That's what your spirit whispered into their world. You were more than a moment. You were a call to return to what's real. They're looking for you. Instead, They're looking for the tranquility they experienced around you, the sort that no one else has been able to duplicate. Steve Jobs once said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." You helped someone realize they had done exactly that. Chased power but lost self. And now they're back at your doorstep. Not because of strategy, but because their spirit won't let them ignore the truth you carried. So now the door they once closed is opening again. Not because you forced it, but because you held your posture while the world spun wildly. And now that stillness, the very thing they overlooked, is calling them home. You didn't have to fight to be remembered. Because the kind of energy you carry, the kind born from trials, tested in silence, and refined in fire, can't be forgotten, erased, or replaced. It demands recognition, and that time has come. Number 11. The compensation coming to you will be loud, and it will disturb those who quietly try to bury you. Chosen one, what's about to hit your life isn't just provision. It's divine compensation, and it won't come quietly. It won't be a soft whisper of favor in a corner room. It will be a thunderclap in the middle of the silence that once mocked your presence. The very people who dismissed you, overlooked you, played you, and took your kindness for granted are about to be confronted by a reality they never saw coming. You were always the one. Have you ever wondered if God truly keeps track of the unseen moments? The times you gave without being thanked. The times you were kind when you could have snapped. The moments you showed restraint when betrayal would have justified rage. Heaven kept the ledger. Every insult, every disregard, every attempt to exploit your light was marked, not for vengeance, but for vindication. For the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him. Isaiah 30 verse 18. And now justice is being served, not as revenge, but as rightful reversal. That billionaire, the one you helped when you thought it was just a casual moment, isn't forgetting you. Not only did your action interrupt their trajectory, but it redefined their standard for loyalty and authenticity. You became a reference point, a reset. While others faked connection for gain, you gave them humanity. And now they're investing not just in your potential, but in your proven spirit. Have you ever seen someone rise and wondered why them? Now the roles are reversed. People will look at you and ask the same, but they won't know the years of quiet endurance, the prayers you whispered through tears, or the people who mistook your gentleness for weakness. All they'll see is glory, and all you'll feel is grace. Think of Tyler Perry. He lived in his car, laughed at by many, discredited by the industry. But his breakthrough wasn't just financial. It was public. His success offended those who had mocked his pain. That's what's happening for you. The reward won't be behind the scenes. It will be in plain view. And not for pride, but for prophecy. Have you felt the buildup? That pressure in your spirit? That sense that something is about to shift so drastically it could only be supernatural? That's not your imagination. That's the spiritual earthquake building in your favor. The wealth, the influence, the recognition. It's not coming from a source anyone could manipulate. It's coming from a divine place out of reach from your enemy's grip. They prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Psalm 23 verse 5. That table is being set right now. The very people who called you too soft, too trusting, too small are about to watch you receive compensation. Their connections couldn't manufacture. This isn't just repayment. It's restoration. It's elevation. It's validation from a realm they don't believe in, but will soon be forced to acknowledge. You're not just being rewarded because you helped someone powerful. You're being honored because in helping them, you didn't abandon yourself. You kept your soul intact. And that chosen one is the currency of the kingdom. The people who thought they could discard you will be stunned when they realize the person they tried to erase is now the name being whispered in rooms they're desperate to enter. And the best part, the source of your rise isn't someone they know or someone they can reach. It's not from influence they can sabotage. It's from a force they can't touch. So let them be shocked. Let them talk. Let them stew. Because your time, your divine payback has arrived. Number 12, you're not just getting compensated. You're being strategically positioned by the hand of heaven. Chosen one, what's happening now is not merely a reward. It's a relocation of power. The shift in your life isn't about checks and applause. It's about placement. You're being positioned for something that transcends material wealth. This is kingdom-level elevation, and your soul was made for it. Many chase money thinking it will bring validation. But you didn't chase anything but truth. You didn't sell yourself for temporary gain. You didn't water down your spirit to play by broken rules. You stayed kind. You stayed whole. And because of that, God has carved out a sacred space, a position no strategy could have earned. Your gift will make room for you and bring you before great men. Proverbs 18 verse 16. But chosen one, this isn't just about being in the room. It's about what you carry in the room. Because while others bring ego, you bring essence. While others bring control, you bring compassion. Let's look at Nelson Mandela. Imprisoned for 27 years. His kindness and forgiveness weren't weakness. They became the very tools that restructure a nation. He wasn't just released. He was positioned. And so are you. Because you didn't burn bridges. You built altars. Do you feel it? That holy tug in your spirit that says this isn't just about you anymore. That's because it isn't. This new space you're entering was designed for your influence to ripple into generations. The billionaire you touched, they're not just funding a blessing. They're opening a realm, one reserved for those with clean hands and a steady heart. Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? The one who has clean hands and a pure heart. Psalm 24 verses 3-4. That's you. Not perfect, but pure. Not famous, but faithful. And now heaven is authorizing your next elevation. This isn't a promotion you applied for. It's an inheritance you qualified for. And the most powerful part is not based on metrics or approval ratings. It's based on alignment. You're being placed into arenas where influence flows silently and legacy is shaped. Not because you hustled your way in, but because you endured the fire without becoming fire yourself. Think of Malala Yousafzai. After surviving an assassination attempt, she didn't rise for revenge. She rose with purpose. She was positioned and the world took notice. Not just because she survived, but because of how she led with grace. That's the energy you carry. That's the level you're being called into. So when the resources come, when the invitations arrive, when the doors you thought were sealed burst open, remember this isn't just success. This is spiritual positioning. And you've been chosen to occupy it, not for ego, but for impact. This is your moment, not to gloat, but to govern, not to impress, but to influence. You're not just getting paid. Chosen one. You're being placed, and heaven itself is backing the move. Number 13. The reward that's coming will be so precise, so personal, it will silence every doubt you've ever carried. Chosen one. What's coming your way isn't some vague blessing or generic opportunity that could have been handed to anyone. It is a custom-tailored revelation, an answer crafted in the secret chambers of heaven for your spirit alone. This reward will not feel random. It will not be confusing. It will arrive with such divine precision that your soul will tremble, not in fear, but in awe. Have you ever felt like your deepest desires were too hidden to be noticed? The ones you never even dare to say aloud. The dreams you tucked away in silence. Not because you didn't believe, but because the world told you they were too big, too soft, too impossible. What if I told you that those very desires were being listened to not by man, but by God, and not only heard but answered? Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 37 verse 4, not the desires born from ego, but the sacred ones, those woven into your DNA before you took your first breath. That's what this blessing is aiming for. This isn't some leftover miracle. It's made for you. Think of Viola Davis. She grew up in poverty, endured rejection, and was told over and over that she didn't look the part. But when her reward came, it wasn't just an award. It was roles that reflected her truth, her soul, her story. That's what's coming for you. A moment that feels like your life's jigsaw puzzle finally found its missing piece. This opportunity will open a door that perfectly matches your internal architecture. It'll resonate like a frequency only your spirit can hear. And in that moment, you'll know this couldn't have happened for anyone else. It was a sign delivered meant. Have you ever wondered if your sacrifices mattered? If your years of quiet endurance had any audience at all, this moment will be your answer. Because the exactness of it, the way it wraps around your calling like skin to bone, will prove it wasn't coincidence. It was orchestration. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Psalm 23 verse 5. This table won't just have food. It will have your name engraved on the seat, and the people who doubted you will have no choice but to witness your appointed hour. This blessing isn't just going to provide. It's going to prophesy. It will declare that your journey wasn't a waste, that your pain had purpose, that every no, every delay, every detour was setting you up for this. The reward will feel like something you once only dreamed in your spirit's language. A whisper now becoming thunder. You didn't just save someone with money. You activated a moment that has now turned into movement and what's about to be placed in your hands. It will silence every lie you once believed about your music worth. Number 14. You were always wealthy, but now the world will be forced to see it. Chosen one, let's make this clear. You've never been broke, not truly. Your account may have gone low. Your resources may have been tested, but your soul was never poor. You've always carried wealth, but not the kind this world is trained to recognize. The way you gave without keeping score. The way you loved when others withheld the strength you showed by forgiving again and again. That is currency, the rarest kind, and the universe has finally decided to reveal your true net worth. Not through gold, through glory. Have you ever sat in a room and felt invisible even though you carried the very thing the room lacked? That's because the world doesn't know how to measure incorruptible spirit. But now, someone with eyes to see beyond the surface is about to showcase what's been hidden in plain sight. The wealth that was always within is now going to manifest without. Beloved, I pray that in every way you may prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prospers. 3 or John 1 verse 2. Your soul has been rich. Now it's time for everything else to catch up. Because heaven doesn't just bless what's visible. Heaven honors what's eternal. Think of Jane Goodall. Her wealth was never measured in luxury, but in legacy. She poured herself into the earth, into truth, into compassion. And now the world recognizes that her life was wealth personified. Like her, you weren't sent here to collect trophies. You were sent here to create transformation. And that chosen one is priceless. The people who once looked down on you because your car wasn't new, your clothes weren't loud, or your circles weren't elite, they're about to realize they were blind to the gold that walked among them. Because the world measures wealth in numbers, but heaven measures it in light. Have you ever questioned if your softness was working against you? If maybe, just maybe, you should have become colder to match the world's pace, but you didn't. And that decision, that beautiful defiance is why your reward will not only elevate you, but correct the narrative. The blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. Proverbs 10 verse 22, you're not just getting rich. You're becoming revelation. Your life is about to preach that goodness pays off, that authenticity wins, that purity survives the fire and comes out as gold. Now the ones who called you naive will have to watch as you are honored, not just with compensation, but with credibility. Your name will begin to circulate, not in gossip, but in rooms where decisions are made. You won't need to announce it. Your presence will declare it. Think of Fred Rogers. Mr. Rogers didn't scream for attention. He wore sweaters, not suits. But he changed the fabric of culture. His kindness was his platform. And now, decades later, he's remembered as one of the wealthiest souls of a generation. You carry that same currency. And now, finally, the world's lens is adjusting to see it clearly. So, chosen one, prepare. You're not being upgraded. You're being revealed. And this isn't just the end of a journey. It's the unveiling of everything you were born to carry. What you held in private is now becoming public. What you gave without applause is now drawing divine attention. This is your moment, not to compete, but to complete what God began in you long ago. The world is finally ready to see what heaven always knew. You are never chasing wealth. You are wealth. Beloved, let this truth land in your spirit like a divine confirmation. The billionaire you unknowingly saved was never the finale. That moment was just the spark. What's about to unfold in your life isn't simply repayment. It's revelation. It's God revealing what he always knew about you, even when others were blind to it. The doors that are about to open won't just make room for your gift. They will elevate your name, align you with purpose, and shift the atmosphere around you. Because this isn't just a reward. It's a repositioning. You didn't ask for attention. You didn't beg for status. You simply lived with integrity when it would have been easier to compromise. And now the heavens are echoing the words that have been waiting for the right time to be spoken over your life. Well done, not just for what you did publicly, but for who you chose to remain privately. That chosen one is what made you unforgettable in the eyes of heaven. Have you ever felt like your life was building towards something bigger, even when everything around you looked small? That's because it was. You were never meant to stay hidden. You were being prepared. And now, not only are you being seen, you're being sent into rooms where decisions are made, into spaces where influence is currency, into arenas where your presence alone carries authority. The world is finally catching up to the truth that heaven has always declared. Your kindness was never weakness. It was destiny in disguise. There will be those who don't understand how this happened so suddenly. They'll whisper, how did they go from forgotten to favored? But you'll know. You'll remember the nights no one saw. The choices you made when it hurt. The moments you gave when you had nothing left. Every seed of kindness you sweat in silence is now birthing a harvest so undeniable. Even your enemies will be silenced in wonder. For your shame you shall have double, and for confusion they shall rejoice in their portion. Isaiah 61 verse 7. This is that portion. This is that season. You're not just walking into blessings. You're walking into divine justice. So when the opportunity arrives that feels almost too perfect, too aligned, too personal, don't doubt it. Receive it. This was handcrafted for your heart, your healing, and your legacy. The world will call it luck. The universe may call it alignment. But you will know the truth. This is divine compensation. This is God's reply to every tear you never explained and every sacrifice you never publicized. You're not just rising. You're being revealed. You were always the wealthy one, always the powerful one, always the chosen one. Now the world is just being introduced to the version of you heaven has celebrated all along. To every soul who made it to this part of the journey, who listened with their heart wide open, I want to say thank you truly. Thank you for walking through this message with reverence. Thank you for showing up for yourself, for your future, for the higher version of you that refuses to be silenced. Your time, your spirit, your presence here. It means more than words can say. If this message has stirred something inside you, if it reminded you of who you are and what you carry, and if you feel led to support this work, you can do so through Super Thanks. Your contribution, no matter how big or small, helps keep this space alive for souls like yours who are seeking more than noise. They're seeking truth. But whether you donate or not, please hear this clearly. You are already deeply appreciated. Your energy here is sacred. Your witness to this word is powerful. Your support, emotional, spiritual, or financial, is never unnoticed. And now I release this blessing over you. May everything that has been hidden in you rise to the surface with unstoppable light. May every seed of kindness return to you multiplied, pressed down, and overflowing. May your influence be felt not through volume, but through presence. And may your name be whispered in places you never imagined by people whose favor you didn't chase, but were chosen by. This is your time, and not just to be noticed, but to make impact. The kind of impact that bends generational patterns and leaves legacy instead of scars. You've waited long enough. You've stayed true long enough. Now it's time to step forward, not with apology, but with authority. If this message confirms something you felt but couldn't explain, I encourage you, share it. Send it to someone else you know is chosen. Someone whose heart is pure and path has been heavy. Someone who needs to know their kindness wasn't wasted. Together, we are building more than an audience. We are building a community of world shifters, legacy livers, and leveled revolutionaries. So stay connected, stay rooted, stay expectant, and above all, stay kind. Because kindness when it flows from a heart aligned with God, doesn't just change moods. It changes destinies. It opens billion-dollar doors. It roots lives. And now it's about to crown you. You're not just blessed, you're chosen. You're not just favored, you're assigned. In the next chapter, it will be written in miracles. God bless you, chosen one. And remember, what's next is bigger than you think.